obviously, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself and talk a little bit about the Kellogg Company and sustainability in our roots. You'll hear a lot of puns from me as well during this presentation. And then we'll talk about what's going on in the field and then some macro trends for 2018 that we can kind of see on the horizon. A little bit about me first. I am the sustainability manager, communications manager in Kellogg's Europe. I'm a dog lover, I'm a foodie, and I'm a vegan, but I'm also in love with brands. So these things would have seemed mutually exclusive, you know, being a vegan, working in a food company and liking brands, but actually these kind of cross sections are occurring more and more within consumers. And I'm lucky enough that I get to work in a company every day that I'm allowed to talk about food and veganism, and I don't get told to shut up. So what I'm kind of focusing on today is about sustainability, responsibility and transparency, and how that builds trust with consumers and how brands are getting closer and closer to their audiences through kind of social media, through commentators, and how that's facilitating a consumer demand, not only for goods and services, but also for more information about the companies. And food and social media are a particularly interesting area because everyone knows if you go onto Instagram, like there's absolutely gazillions of pictures of people's breakfast, people's lunches, people's lattes, everything. So there's a real opportunity in food to talk about where food is coming from and what people are doing with it. So I think the important thing for me here is about authenticity and communicating that authenticity effectively. So what makes Kellogg's a little bit special, I know I'm making the assumption everybody knows who Kellogg's is. I assume everyone does, so I'm making a huge assumption there. But what makes Kellogg's a little bit special as a company is that we not only have a business strategy house, but we also have a kind of a do-good strategy house. And I'm going to bring your attention to the middle two pillars, which are feeding people in need and nurturing our planet, because they're the two areas that I'll be talking about today. Winding the clock back a little bit to the start of the Kellogg Company, and I have a photograph here of our founder, W.K. Kellogg. And way back at the turn of the 19th century, he was actually at the forefront of sustainability in food production without even knowing it. You know, it's a relatively new term for most food companies, but we've been doing it for years. You know, W.K. Kellogg purchased a swathe of land in Michigan and donated it to academics to study kind of bird populations, biodiversity, etc. And he also ran a competition in the Farming Herald, there's a quote from him here in that, about the best ear of corn. So getting farmers to actually put their best foot forward and, you know, give the best crops that they could, and he offered a prize for that. So without even knowing it, he was fusing business needs and sustainability practices as well, really, really early on. And that tradition continues today in the Kellogg Company. We do sustainability not only on a European level, but also on a global level. And I think no presentation today has been complete without a mention of the UN Sustainable Goals, so I've just thrown those in there as well. But we do a lot of work aligning with two of those goals. You know, we're also working with partners like Oxfam, you know, and looking at the, you know, behind the brand, so the scores they give us for the stuff that we do in sustainability and citizenship, etc. And we are the most improved brand on that index at the moment. We also work with the Wildlife Fund as well to look at even sensitive areas like the sourcing of palm oil and make sure that we are doing the right thing in those areas. So we're going to continue to work with NGOs and, you know, kind of external auditors and stuff to make sure that we are doing the right things. But it's not just these external partners that we've got to talk to. You know, it's our employees as well. We know that employees are more motivated by a company that's actively managing, that's got a strong CSR program. And we know that companies that are actively managing for climate change have a higher ROI on their investment. But we also know that consumers have a big desire for sustainability, and this translates into purchase intention and actual purchasing. And you can see the top one here. People are actually willing to pay more from a company, pay more for goods for a company or a brand that they trust. So that's really interesting, and that's the kind of cross-section again of kind of profitability and sustainability. And again, this is just, you know, kind of more on the same. This is the Edelman Trust Barometer. And we know that people will choose to buy goods and services for companies that they trust. This is a trend that we're seeing more and more in industry. So just a little bit about what we're actually doing and how we're kind of putting together all the stuff that we do and bundling that all up in a kind of a consumer-friendly way, and how we then communicate that out to the various stakeholder groups. We've got two different charts up here. On the right is our sustainability chart, and on the left is our social purpose. And these two intersect quite a lot in the work that we do. But I'm going to focus for the time being on this left-hand side. And you can see that obviously we've got two elements to this sustainability efforts that we do. We've got the responsible sourcing side. So we talk about our ingredients and the raw materials that we purchase from suppliers. We also talk about actual sustainable agricultural practices that we implement, how we support smallholder farmers, and in turn how that kind of filters down into women farmers and workers. And then we also talk about natural resource conservation, so looking at the areas of energy, of packaging, of water use and waste as well. So just coming on now to how we kind of help and support farmers. So we have a program called the Kellogg's Origins Program, and it's the umbrella term that we use to talk about all the stuff that we do with farmers across Europe and actually across the globe. But for this presentation, we're going to focus on Europe. So it was set up in 2014 to look at climate smart agricultural practices that we can run test versions of on small farms that we liaise directly with, and then how we share the learnings more widely. So currently at the moment in our Origins program, we've got 4 programs live in Europe. We've got 1 in the UK on wheat. We've got 2 in Spain, both on rice. And the rice goes into some of our products as well, like Choco Krispies. And we've got 1 in Italy, again on rice, that goes into our Cocoa Pops bars. So we provide support to farmers, like we run trials, we get external experts in to share best practice, and we work with experts like NIAB in the UK to run workshops. And I'll show you a bit more about that in a minute. And then on the sourcing side, we have committed to responsibly sourcing our top 10 ingredients by 2020. So you can see here a lot of the ingredients that we use on a regular basis are on that list. So these are our top 10 ingredients that we're going to make sure that we're responsibly sourcing, including of course palm oil there. Now, so a little bit about the projects that we run. These are actually some photos from our UK farms, and we look a lot about soil health. As I said, we worked with NIAB to talk about soil health, biodiversity, and how that helps to increase yields for farmers, and also on cover crops and how that helps nutrients in the soil as well. And actually, we ran a cover crop trial last year. It was one of the largest trials in Europe, and the findings were that by using cover crops, farmers could increase their output up to half a tonne per hectare, which could increase the value of some crops by around €60 per hectare. So instead of me talking about it, I'm going to let one of the experts actually share some insights with you on this as well.
We're here today with the Origins farmers looking at agroforestry, combining trees and crops on the same land area. Agroforestry is giving us the benefits in terms of biodiversity and also increasing sort of the ecological niches for beneficial insects. I trained as a soil scientist and spent time living and working in Africa, where I first became exposed to agroforestry. And what I wanted to do when we started farming here was bring some of the things I'd seen and learned about into a temperate agricultural situation.
You're in a field of winter oats. This was winter wheat last year. It had a cover crop sown into the winter wheat in May, which was Phacelia.
I find it very interesting that Kellogg's are keen to connect with the farmers at the end of the supply chain so that the whole job is linked up. We have a good group of like-minded farmers who are very interesting to talk to, and we bounce ideas off each other. And I think you can learn as much from another farmer as you can from an expert in the room.
We're really interested and keen on soil health, so how can we make our soils healthier to grow more nutritious food? The best bit about the farm visit today was actually walking around in some of the fields, actually getting a spade or a fork into the soil and to have a look at the condition of his farm, and to see the interaction between conventional combinable crops like wheat or barley or oats in this case, with the strips of trees sort of dissecting the landscape was absolutely fascinating, providing insect feed and nesting sites for things like grey partridge, absolutely fantastic.
So you can see there some of the farmers that we work with, and actually I'm in a WhatsApp group with all those guys as well, and they send around the weirdest photo of combine harvesters and all those kind of things, and they're really active on social media as well, so they're really good at communicating sustainability efforts too. And just really quickly here, these are a couple of projects that we actually have going on in Spain in a place called Delta del Ebro, which is in Catalonia. One of these projects over here on the right-hand side, this is a guy called Jaume, and he decided he wanted to make his strip of rice field organic. So instead of using pesticides, what he did was he bought some ducks who eat those little crayfish who nibble away at the root of his rice plants. And then he also put up some bat boxes in the neighbouring fields, in the neighbouring trees, so because the bats eat the unfriendly black fly that then eat his rice fields as well. So he managed to eliminate the use of pesticides and herbicides in his rice fields. And the same with Manolo here. Basically, by planting different types of plants on his fields, he was able to kind of reduce the impact of climate change and extreme weather conditions like flooding and drought on his land and increase his yields as well. Moving on then to natural resource conservation, and again, as part of the sustainability work that we do, we look really closely at all the different elements of our production, and our supply chain and our production. So we know we use water in our factories, so we're committed to both reducing the amount of water we use and also implementing water reuse projects in a lot of our factories too. We're also looking at energy consumption and reducing the amount of energy that we use. And again, like one of our previous speakers, we've actually signed up to ORI 100. So we'll be resourcing all our energy, I think it's by 2050, from green or renewable sources. We're also committed to waste reduction, and actually we're way ahead of our targets on that. We're already sending zero waste to landfill already at the moment from our factories. And we're also continually investigating new ways to make our packaging resource efficient and make our packaging better, more recyclable, more environmentally friendly. And again, to your point earlier, these successes are not just good for the environment, they actually make really good business sense. So we're looking at them from all perspectives. Now, as I said, there's kind of two strands to the work we do, and they both intersect. So I'm going to move on now to our social purpose and what we do in terms of kind of feeding people and all the different things that we call 3 billion better days. So basically what we're doing with 3 billion better days, it's a commitment that we made to help people across the planet, is we're donating food to families in need. We're expanding our breakfast programs. We have a program called Breakfast for Better Days, where we support breakfast clubs and food banks to give out food to people who need it, to families and children who need it. We're also committed to supporting the livelihoods and increasing the yields of smallholder farmers and women farmers. And we also engage our employee populations across the globe in volunteering projects as well. And of course, as with everything, we like to talk about it. We like to invite others to join it. We like to get people to tweet and share their experiences as well. And here's just a little example of some of the things that we did last year. So this is a new breakfast club we opened in Milan. There's one of only two in Milan at the moment. Down here, we actually raised money by giving away surplus food for Crosscare and getting donations. And you can see Tony the Tiger joined us here for one of the sessions that we did. And this is actually helping in a Crosscare garden. We actually plant community gardens to help people grow their own crops as well. This, as I said, is quite an interesting point for me, because at the UN summit last year in Bonn in November, Kellogg was invited to speak about food security and become an advocate for smallholder and women farmers to help kind of secure their livelihoods by, in the area of food security. So it's a kind of a nice intersection between kind of that gender equality and also sustainability and farming as well. So it's a new kind of slant, but a very interesting one. And then also in terms of communication, over the years we've done lots of communication around this. You may or may not have seen some of our TV ads, but we've brought children to farms so they know more about where their food comes from. We've given away free growing kits so people can grow their own herbs at home. And we've even dressed some TOWIE stars up in farming outfits and brought them to farms to get some headlines about it as well. So we are committed to doing, the communication around these things because it's so important, but it's about keeping the ideas fresh and making sure that they're interesting for consumers as well. So we're really lucky that in 2018, one of the big projects that we have started the year with is the launch of a brand new cereal called WK Kellogg. And this is much more in the natural, the natural healthy space. And as you can see here, this is the manifesto from the back of pack. And one of the key points in the manifesto we have is that we're going to continue to give back to the communities and the planet that we borrow from. So this is an important direction for us. And here's the range, just in case you guys want to go get some. It's on shelf at the moment, but I just want to kind of draw your attention to a few key elements on this. Basically, it's 100% plant-based, it's vegan, it's organic, and it's high in fibre and low in salt and saturated fat. And of course, we made a point of not including anything like artificial colours, flavours or preservatives, no animal byproducts, and there's no palm oil in any of this range as well. So how do we get this across to people? How do we get people interested in it? When we know people are oversubscribed with notifications on their phones, on their computers, it's constantly a battle for share of voice. But I suppose what we have to do is make sure that we are connecting with the right consumers in the right way, and that we're connecting with their kind of ideals and what resonates with them. And in order to make sure that the content we're developing is the right thing for them, we need to make sure it's what's called thumb stopping. I know, pretty cheesy, but for millennial audiences, people have such short attention spans. All their news feed comes and scrolls. So you have to make sure that what you're putting out there is going to make them stop for a second and pay attention. And also, of course, all this content needs to be short and jargon-free. I'm about to use a real buzzword here now. It needs to be snackable so they can take it and share it and make the most of it as well. But above all, it has to be authentic. So here's just a couple of kind of macro trends that I think are going to be increasingly huge in the food space next year. And quite often what happens is brands see these kind of trends coming through, and they get afraid of them, and they see a few comments on social. But as far as I'm concerned, people need to connect with these kind of trends, and actually, because they're resonating with consumers, they should be resonating with brands too. So they shouldn't shy away from topics like veganism or recycling, because these are topics that people want to see more and more of, and we're going to see more and more of whether we like it or not. And then just really quickly, a shameless plug to end my presentation. We're actually launching a new kind of corporate communications content platform, which will be live across Europe on Kellogg. So this will be kind of what we're doing in terms of the people we work with. So, some of our key stakeholders talking about their visions for sustainability, some of the brands and how that relates to sustainability, and heart and soul, so more about, feeding people in need, and of course volunteering as well for Kellogg's. So that's it from me. I guess I'll take any questions.